Welcome to EXSIN Live. Dave and Phil here, and today we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk to you about how to retain your new hires through mentorship. And the article was written by Antink and Tank to discuss some steps you can take to keep your hires on board. Now, Phil, I know you know this. How much does it cost to hire somebody and lose them?
At least a 1 year salary. At least. There's some estimates it's up to 4 or 5 times.
3x, yeah.
Yeah,
3X.
I mean, but it depends on
where
which.
they are. Yeah.
But at an absolute minimum, 1 year salary.
You know, and Richard Branson said it best: treat your people well enough they want to stay, but let them go when they want to. They'll come back.
Yeah.
And most companies don't get that. If you train your people like a forever employee and give them all the tools they need, they are going to love on you more than you ever know.
We've got a client that's been a client for a long, long time that they do a lot of rehires, and they're in an industry where it's very easy to get courted away for what you perceive as something that's more value for that employee. And they get a ton of people back to them and say, okay, wait, we really screwed up. Now that speaks to that company's culture and just everything. But I think, you've got, to your point, you've got to help them. You got to give them opportunities to grow and be successful, but you also got to let them leave when they need to.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is that if you look at companies side by side, they could be in the same industry, and you go, why is this company successful and this company's not?
Yeah.
Typically, 9 times out of 10, it's a people issue.
Oh, yeah.
And the people in the company that are succeeding have been treated well, are bought in. They know they're cared and loved about. They know there's an opportunity for them to move up in the company to do bigger things. And the people that aren't doing well in the other company, they're being ridden like old horses into the ground, and nobody recognizes them, empowers them, mentors them, and they typically fail. And that's no different in corporate culture, small business culture, or the military culture.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. It really drives me crazy when you have, especially small to mid-sized privately held company business owners who will say, well, I want them to work as hard as I do. Well, my question's always the same. Are you paying them as well as you're paying yourself? Because if you're not, that's an unrealistic expectation. You also got to be realistic. In my opinion.
It's more than that, because money's a hygiene factor, right? Money is just a thing. What I will tell you is if you empower your employees and you let them have ownership in what they do and make decisions and grow them, they probably are going to work as hard as you do. I mean,
see, this is where Dave and I have a fundamental disagreement. That happens sometimes. I believe it is about the money. Everybody says it's not about the money until when it's about the money.
Well,
I mean, my whole point is, I agree with what you're saying. My point is that it's unrealistic. You shouldn't be shocked when somebody who's getting paid $50,000 a year doesn't give the same amount of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears as you as the owner of a small business. You shouldn't be shocked by that. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay? I mean, so when you're in today's point, you've got to do things that are going to help them flourish, right? Because we can't afford to pay everybody the highest salary out there. But you can afford to create a culture that really makes people feel a part of something. I just think owners have to have realistic expectations also of what they're going to get out of their employees. I think we can either keep telling ourselves bullshit, excuse my language, or we can really deal with the reality of it. People today are not the same they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And what motivates a lot of people isn't the same. To Dave's point, the millennial generation right now is not so much about money. It's about all the other things. I've got kids that are in Iceland right now. They just go to different countries and work from there for a couple months. This is their plan. They work remotely. The workplace has changed, right? It's more about freedom and ability to go do things than it is for money for some people. I'm just saying we got to be realistic as owners. That's all I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah, I think from experience, if you empower your teammates and help them grow, you're gonna get great employees. If you listen to what they have, their concerns, and you give them the ability to succeed, science shows that they will respond to that. Right?
Sure.
And success is different depending on what generation you're in.
Absolutely.
I mean, my father's generation, his father's generation, success was different times, different hardships. I think we're going to see a lot more generations like my grandfather coming here pretty soon, because we're going to see people grow through some tough times, and it's going to change their perspective, because that's important. Perspective is an amazing thing.
What's that you say? And I know it wasn't original. What you said is tough times create tough people.
Easy times create weak people. Tough
people.
Tough times create tough people, which create great times, which create soft people. It is a cycle.
Yeah.
It is a civilizational cycle.
Right.
So that we are in a time where we have soft people creating tough times. So we'll
see how it works.
We'll build tough people. I mean, it's going to happen.
It'll come full circle again.
Or we won't. And the next thing that he talks about, and it's really important, is you've got to fuel a growth mindset. You've got to teach people to push themselves and be excited about that, to learn new things and go do great things. When you do that, you build self-esteem, which builds confidence, which builds a stronger company.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think too that having a set, we're working with a client right now that, to be quite honest, we're trying to help launch a growth mindset with. They've just plugged along, right? Done fine, just plugged along.
They're making money.
Making money, but to have real growth, you've got to have a growth mindset. You can't have a static mindset. You can't go, oh no, I'm comfortable here. I mean, you can. There's plenty to do. But it's not going to give you typically. Usually that doesn't align with what you say.
You better pay them a lot more money.
Better do something.
I mean,
better do something.
If you wanted to work, like Phil said, it's not money until it is. Well, if you're not taking care of the people, it really becomes about money really fast. So
it does. If you're not taking care of the people, it really becomes all about money.
I mean, that's a bad place to be if you're in a business. The next one is create a sense of belonging. And this is any culture. I think let's just start with kids, right? Kids typically, when they're in kindergarten, they want to be friends with everybody. There aren't really a lot of not friend groups. And something happens where people parse off and leave some people behind.
Junior high. Woo! Brutal. Junior high's brutal.
It gets nasty.
It's brutal.
But the point is if you have a junior high culture in your company, where you have a cliquish company and a few people are running road shot over everybody in the company, you're not creating a sense of belonging. People don't want to go to work. We saw this with a client a few years ago in Wichita. Yeah. We had a group of employees that had pushed one employee aside because they didn't understand him. They didn't see his perspective. They thought he was a jackwagon.
He wasn't.
And he wasn't. But he had been shoved aside. He wasn't part of the organization because his personality was a little bit different. He was a little odd, right? Well, I would offer to you, in today's culture, we need to stop treating odd people differently and bring them into the culture and let them know they're loved and trusted, right? Because they could be your best asset. You're talking to a football player who's talking to you in high school who's all my friends were on the debate team and computer science club, right? They were all AP students because they were good.
That's where it all started.
It is. And my whole life, because of that, I understand both sides, that athlete mentality as well as the very intelligent, coder or engineer mentality.
See, and I grew up in a town that everybody was friends with everybody because there wasn't enough of us not to be. I mean, we had friends that we played sports with. We had friends that were motorheads, that always were wrenching and working on cars. We had friends that did no sports, that didn't run, that just worked. We were just all friends, and that was because of our culture, right? And so I grew up in a world where you didn't really look at, so much is done socioeconomically, right?
It is.
And when you grow up in a small town, you can't really do that because then you have no friends because there's you got to kind of be friends with everybody. And of course, I wouldn't change where I was raised for anything because I think it prepared me for life. And I think Dave can attest to this, where I'm pretty comfortable with with kind of any socioeconomic, situation I'm in. It's because I've hung out with janitors' kids and owners of companies' kids, and everything in between. And so it's. I think culture and your environment has a lot to do with it, but at some point people also mentor that behavior and mentor that growth mindset and that sense of belonging.
So as an owner of a company, here's what I'm going to offer to you. Find your people that are considered outcasts. Figure out what's going on and bring them back in. Bring them back into the team. And if they're not a fit for your company, then move along.
Yeah.
I mean, you may have to make the decision for the sake of the culture of your organization. If you want to bring young people in and you want to grow your company the way you want to grow it, you got to train them to do their best in their jobs, their tactical skills. Then you have to help them with the strategic skills of dealing with people, working together, building a stronger organization, having open, honest conversations, giving and receiving feedback in the organization to ensure you keep them on board, because that's where you're going to get the buy-in, right? If you're only, and Phil's going to argue with you, but if your only motivation for them staying there is a bigger paycheck, they're going to be looking for a bigger paycheck.
Well, I think maybe there's some misunderstanding of what I was saying. I'm not saying that's your only motivation. I'm saying owners who expect people to care as much as they do that are making $50,000 a year when the owner's making $500,000, that owner's got his head up his butt and isn't living in a real world. So I'm not saying money's the only motivator. I'm saying that owners need to have realistic expectations of their employees. That's my whole point. Has nothing to do with money being the only thing.
Yeah, and I will tell you this: there are more and more today. There are more job hoppers for cash.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine here hired an employee, paid them extremely well, highest paid employee in the company, and he bailed as soon as another industry offered him more money.
Well, one of my kids, as you know, is in the IT industry, and he moved to a different part of the country, took a great job, and 30 days later got hired away by another company that was down the hall in the building he was at, making $35,000 more a year. Mm-hmm. So there are those industries too. I mean,
software's one of them.
As a 27-year-old young man, somebody's going to offer me $3,000 more a month. You're going to have a really kick-ass culture for me to stick around and pass on that. Because I mean you can do a lot with $3 extra grand a month.
You can.
You know.
You can.
So there's, and that's I guess my whole point. I think Dave and I agree. I think we're saying the same. I'm just pointing out that to me, realistic expectations of what you should expect as an owner. We got to quit lying to ourselves.
Well, and I will say this: if you have a young person that's offered a lot more money to go, celebrate them leaving.
Yeah, they're gonna leave.
Give them a hug.
Yeah,
let them go. Because if you've created the right culture, I'm pretty sure eventually they're going to get bit in the backside with this other company, and they're going to come back.
I mean, maybe if that company's got terrible culture. I mean, there are companies out there that pay a lot of money that got great cultures. So, but your point is, leave the door open, right?
Don't burn a
bridge, because great employees are hard to find. I mean, they're really hard to find. You know, and it doesn't matter what industry. It used to be industries, but there was just some industries that was really hard. Now all industries are hard. Some are just harder than others, but none of them are easy to find people anymore. It used to be you'd never have it, like nursing. You'd never have a problem finding nursing years past.
Oh, you can't get nursing work.
You can't. I've got a friend.
They get treated terribly too.
I got a friend that has to pay outrageous hiring bonuses just to get somebody to come. I mean, it's insane the shortage that they have. Insane. And so it's, engineers are at an all-time low. I mean, it's a problem. But you can, to your point, Dave, creating a culture that's right and that employees feel that ownership is extremely important, the most important.
And what I will tell you, if your employees have friends and you treat them well, they're going to tell your friends how well you're treating them and what's going on, right?
I think too, part of the challenge, this isn't directly in line with what we're talking about today, but I think part of it too is I think leadership hasn't evolved with the times. I think there's a lot of things that used to work, a hierarchy system used to work more for our generation that was raised that way, and so we're going through a real paradigm shift right now in what works inside businesses.
Well, what's going to be interesting, we talked about it earlier, soft times create soft people, which makes us change the way things we do, which creates hard people to go back to the way we did things before. Yeah. History is destined to repeat itself because people will not accept the reality of history and the repetitive nature. So right now, hierarchical structure, there's a lot of people writing about it, and that it's got to change. And for the current culture we have, I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, but long term, what does it really mean? Right?
I'll bet anybody a Coke that's watching us today that in 5 to 10 years we'll be back to
full circle,
wearing suits in business offices in inner city areas and doing things like we did 20 years ago. Yeah. Unless something significantly drastically changes.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I'm not as confident as you are on some of that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree, totally. I'm just not as confident because I think what's happening is we find ourselves, I mean, at least when I talk to people, you go out and talk to these, 35 to really 30 to 40-year-olds, the people that are moving into all the leadership positions in companies around the world, and they're wired different. I mean, and the only reason I don't disagree with what
it goes back to soft times create soft people that have perspectives, and that's where they are, and that is awesome.
But I guarantee you, people that were raised in the Depression think all of us are soft.
100%.
So I think there's part of that too, right?
Sure.
So I'm not as big on the concept of that we're going to go back to suits and buildings, because I don't think we are. I mean, I just don't. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying I don't think we are. I think we've got to figure out ways to work virtually, because I think that die has been cast, and you're seeing it. I mean, you got the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, can't get people to come back to the office.
Yeah, but the state of Virginia, they just fired 300 people. Just lost their jobs in the state of Virginia because they wouldn't come back to the office.
And my point is ultimately, it used to be there were always people in line to jump in and say, well, we'll come to the office. There's not as many of those people, and you still have to get stuff done. So I'm just saying there's a lot of different variables than what there's been in any time in our history of our country. That is crazy.
I 100% agree with that statement, and it goes back to people are used to things being easier. They want it to be an easy way. Yeah. The reality of it is 300 people in Virginia just lost their jobs. They will either lean out. It may be the best thing that happens to Virginia, frankly. But because they're probably going to lean out their organization and become more efficient and save more money to grow the state better. We've seen that with other companies. We lean them out, and their company's growing now because people don't want to do certain things. So the owner figured out how to solve the problem. And that's going to be the challenge for the worker, is that owners are going to go, well, McDonald's is hiring robots. Applebee's is hiring robots.
Right.
So,
well, we had a conversation a month ago. What's business we can get into that's driven by robotics? I mean, seriously.
Robot maintenance.
Yes, because it's a real thing.
Wait.
What happened?
Damn it.
Did we give it away?
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, no. There's that execution thing.
So while Phil is right, this is we're going through the shift right now.
Yeah.
We're also going through another leaning shift with business owners, and companies are figuring it out.
I wanted to share this with you. I got this email or this text, and it was pretty interesting. It was on a pseudo-government agency. I guess I shouldn't even say really pseudo. It is a government agency because they get all their money ultimately from taxpayers through the schools. But it's the OSSAA, the Oklahoma...
Oh, the sports guys.
And they listed what everybody made in the organization. Now, this article and this deal that was done by an attorney who's gotten his tail beat by the OSSAA on several eligibility issues. So he's not a fan of the OSSAA. So it's really a hit piece. But it was interesting to hear the conversation about income and all this. And somebody said, well, that guy's making $168,000 a year. This is the guy that's in charge. And I went, okay. I mean, 2022, that's not a lot of money. To do what he's doing, that's not a lot of money. Well, they got all these other people making 90 and 100. I'm going, okay. In 2022, that's not unusual. I mean, things change, right? But the biggest sticking point was they had $3 million in reserves. Well, that tells me they're being fiscally responsible.
I agree with that.
Everything is perspective, I guess. But I think that what nobody talks about is 2 years ago when they had to cancel their two biggest money makers because of COVID, they made no money. And I think that's true with a lot of businesses, right? I think the people that have good cultures, the people that are willing to bend and to grow and to take what's good with the change and put your heels in the ground in areas where it's not good, the people that have the courage to do that are going to win. I mean, they're going to win.
So this started how to keep your learning voice. We got to digress. Let's recap real quick. So empower your team, give them the ability to make decisions and make them better. Talk to them about their choices and their decisions to make sure they're making the right decisions, and they can explain to you why they're making the changes they're making. And then give them the tools to be successful.
Yeah.
That is what's going to keep people working for you, right? That is what's going to build the right culture in your organization. And I will tell you, mentorship in my previous life was exceptional. I mean, that is what the military is founded on. Whether it's the Airmen Association, whether it's this Company Grade Officer Association, whether it's bringing you up through the ranks and going to different schools and things that you do, it's all about if you want to be engaged and engage people, you can. And that's why the military is so good at what they do, frankly, because they build teams that are connected and understand the culture and they accept and receive feedback well.
I was going to say, but even the military's evolved a lot in those areas. I mean, now they haven't gotten away from their core principles, but the way they deliver certain things has evolved. I remember, something as simple as like what I got on my right arm. That used to be such a big no-no. I mean, there was just, and it's taken a lot of years. They've realized that, maybe having a tattoo doesn't necessarily mean you're the Antichrist. And so but they recently changed it now to where you can have tattoos on all different parts of your body and the way things are done. And I think some things like that is good. I mean, because I think there are those things that we hang on to that generationally, they don't really matter at the end of the day. They don't have that big of they don't have an effect on whether somebody can perform their job. So I think there's things where you can evolve that's really important. That's the foundational stuff is where you get into a slippery slope, right? And that's what makes it so hard when so many people work virtually. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to create a culture and to create those things that are so important.
Culture, social skills, how to deal with people,
nobody's there.
How to sell,
right.
how to communicate, how to engage.
Right.
All those things, I hate to break it to everybody, they're getting lost.
They are getting lost.
I talked to a client this morning that was on a Zoom call. He goes, I couldn't really read them. I can read them better in person than I can over this stupid Zoom meeting.
Right.
I don't know exactly what, if they received us well or not. It seemed like they did, but I couldn't really tell because I wasn't in the room with them. And frankly, we have a generation that's losing that skill set.
Yeah.
And as a mentor, you need to engage your teammates to go out and do things with human beings to not lose those skills.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Now, I will say this, and I know Dave agrees with this. There's a place for these tools, right?
Yep.
I mean, because one good thing about Zoom, to use that deliverable or whatever deliverable you use.
That's what we're doing today.
Yeah, but yes, and you can reach so many more people in so many different places. Used to be you were completely restricted by your geographical area.
Yep.
We're working on different deals with people from New York, Detroit, Ohio. All over the place, and we would have never been able to do that prior to the technology and the way. So there's pros and cons. I think the key is but people still buy from people. People still do business with people they know, like, and trust. Yeah, and they do. They just do. Even if they don't initially, let's say they go, because what I have noticed is people will do business with folks maybe that they don't know as well, but they'll do like one little project or one little thing, and if one thing goes wrong, it's over. It's done. Move down the road. So, to where that relationship, it is just that. It's a relationship where you can work through things, build trust, build confidence, build all these different things. So we got to keep that alive, no doubt.
We do, or it'll change and we'll figure it out, right?
No.
Hey,
or we'll be dead by then.
There's a good chance of that.
Hey,
my wife's betting on that one.
Somebody told me this morning, they said, why old people aren't scared of dying? He goes, what? He goes, they're tired. Oh, yeah, well, I kind of relate to that. I lay there in bed sometimes, but I'm
running ahead of the wall. Really? Why are you running ahead of the wall? Anyway, we digress. Hey, with that, EXSIN Live, mentor your teammates, keep your people engaged, and grow a great company. With that, Dave Evans, I am out of here. With Phil, we're out of here.
I'm still here?
You're still here.
Okay, good. Woo!
Phil's staying. I'm leaving. I forgot. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, like our Facebook page. Be sure to connect. We've got over 100 business videos now on YouTube with EXSIN. So check out our YouTube channel. Now, Dave and Phil, we're out of here.